And joining us for more are Sarasota School Board Chair Bridget Ziegler, Sarasota's new school police chief Paul Grahowski, and Elizabeth DeGenis, the education reporter for the Herald Tribune. I know you've all been up since the crack of dawn. I really appreciate you being here tonight. Chief, let me ask you how it went today. Did this execute the way that you were hoping it for?
It did. It was a great day. All the hard work leading up to today made it all worthwhile today. You'd have little kids come up to you and hug you on the legs and just high-five you all morning. And Elizabeth was with me this morning, and it really made it, for me, all pay off.
Elizabeth, I would imagine that there was a lot of trepidation for parents, given what happened last year, given everything they've heard about the road we have taken to get to this point with the new security system here. What were parents telling you?
You know, I think a lot of people were excited to see law enforcement in schools. I think people have been waiting to kind of see this program roll out. We have heard so much about it, like you're alluding to, but I think that really I did see Chief Grahowski and the officer that was at Gulfgate. They were really interacting with parents and students, and I think, you know, parents are always focused primarily on their kids getting to school first and foremost, but I do think they were excited.
Yeah, Bridget, you knew you were going to get to this day, but I would imagine a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, you didn't know how you were going to get there. This obviously went better than one could have expected if we were looking at this in early June.
I think that it's important. Well, first of all, congratulations, because I think that ultimately, regardless of the decisions and disagreements on how to get there or the time frame in which to do so, it is all about our students being safe. I'm glad that the first day of school came out without a hitch, and it's, again, encouraging because we want families to feel confident in what we're doing. And as a board member, that's kind of where we go, and we have to continue to make sure we're watching closely.
The thing is, and just by looking at Sarasota and Manatee counties are taking different approaches to the same problem and challenge, and we don't know yet which is the best and most effective approach.
And I would argue that I think that it's going to be different for each place in each county. I mean, there's a variety of different, and that's why I believe there was some flexibility within the bill. And that's a whole different show in of itself. But I think ultimately, as we look at the path that we took, we are going to continually have to evolve and evaluate the best path forward and tighten. I mean, when we talk about, I know budget was one of the things that I was concerned about. Again, we don't want to go on the cheap, but we need to have a path and understand what that looks like going forward.
Chief, this may be too early to ask you, but I'll ask you anyway. Sure. Looking at where you are right now, what areas are really a work in progress?
Basically staffing, just getting the people through our HR process and onboarded, and through the training and through the hiring process. We vet our people seriously. We've sent a couple through the HR process that didn't fare out, and we're looking for only the best of the best, and I think we've achieved that. We've got a collection of men and women from around the country who I like to say are the who's who of law enforcement, both local, and we represent every municipality within this county, as well as people from this county.
What about the relationship and the coordination with the Sheriff's Office in terms of the 911 center, all the other things that go there, evidence rooms, sure, and coordination?
My partnership with local law enforcement is what I expected it to be. We are all brothers in arms, and I've been welcomed with open arms. Our partners in the municipality and in this county sheriffs have been great.
Elizabeth, what are you hearing on that regard? Obviously, we've been reporting the bumpy road and the relationships and the breakdown in relationships. Is that over with? Is it solved? Is it just that we're moving into a new realm here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for me to declare really either way where we are at permanently, but I think what I will say is that, you know, I did see there were many sheriff's office deputies around on campus. I mean, the middle and high schools still have deputies, so and some of the elementary schools do too. So I think that there is really a partnership there. At the same time, I think I've heard some people in the sheriff's office express some uncertainty as to what's going to happen next year with the internal police department. So that's a big thing that I'm hearing.
So in fact, we have some really great pictures that were provided to us this morning, in terms of Chief, you and your men and women out there greeting the kids. I mean, that's really what it's all about. That is heartwarming.
Absolutely.
But Bridget, you still have a tremendous amount of work to do over the next 12 months in order to make this transformation complete from the sheriff's office to your own police department?
100%. And one thing that the chief touched on, I think, is so important is, and I had raised concerns, and he knows I've said this to him privately, is it's not about doing it, it's not about one person being right, it's about doing it right. And so ensuring that whoever is taking these positions, we vet them properly. And also, I want everyone in that department to know that they have the support of the board so that they can do things successfully, and it's not about timelines.
And again, this may be too early to ask you, but I'll ask you anyway. If you look at state law and what the state needs to do in terms of legislation, what still needs to be done in terms of security issues and funding that will be up, for the legislature to take on this session?
Well, I certainly think that there's going to be a lot of reflection there. If you look at all of the different districts and who did Guardian, who didn't, and all the funding components, I think I'm always hesitant to us to lean too much on Tallahassee. We have to figure out what works for Sarasota. We have to ensure that we've done the infrastructure component, we have the law enforcement component, the mental health component, and then training our staff. It's a holistic plan, and again, waiting for Tallahassee necessarily can sometimes slow us down and put us in a position not moving forward. So
okay. We have to take a quick break. We are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on school security on the Suncoast after a quick break. Welcome back. We are talking about back to school security, and joining us for more are Sarasota School Board Chair Bridget Ziegler, Sarasota's new school police chief Paul Grahowski, and Elizabeth DeGenis, the education reporter for the Herald Tribune. And Chief, we were talking in the break in terms of your efforts to hire people, to get them on the job. But as we all know, even if you staff up 100% and harden the schools, if you look at the school shootings that we have dealt with for the last 20, 30 years, it's hard to say that enough police officers or SROs or even guardians would have stopped these.
Sure. The biggest thing that we're doing, I think that's really exceptional, is we are providing our employees, our school district's police department to our schools. We have a vested interest to do nothing but protect our children. We don't have a traffic unit, we don't have an air unit, we do one thing, we're going to do one thing well. And that relationship building will get into the component of being able to have approachability. Mental health is the big piece, and having that relationship with our officers will give us the ability to receive the information to get the persons that are in crisis into the right hands.
Bridget, maybe that's the right question to you, because there's just so much you can harden any school, and there's just so many officers you can hire.
I agree, and I think you hit on a great point, and it's something that I've said, and I know it's been discussed even prior to Parkland, but it's really about training our staff as well, but being mindful of all their core role of educating our students. But I was on a call maybe 2 weeks ago, and it included a teacher from Parkland that was on the 3rd floor, and she talked about how she was able to keep her students safe during the shooting, and it was because of the training that she had, not directly from the school district, but something that she had to de-escalate and keep her students safe. And to me, that's powerful, because I know that's something we need to focus on as well.
Elizabeth, you have your finger on the pulse of what professional staff at the school district is saying and what parents are saying. What are they saying to you about their confidence in this new system?
I mean, I think you touched on earlier, there obviously had been a lot of fits and starts when this started. So I think one of the interesting things about this year is there's kind of this two-pronged approach, right? You have the local law enforcement in middle and high schools, and then you have right now some internal police officers in some elementary schools, and then some sheriff's deputies and others. So I think it's really seeing how that all comes together and how that is a cohesive approach, and then how next year it's going to become totally the police department. So it's all really a work in progress. I think it's too early to say how people really feel, but
well, that was my next question, which I guess you can't answer. Do people right now feel safer?
Yeah, it's so hard for me to say. I mean, I think one of the things I think is most interesting is these elementary schools really haven't had full-time police officers in a long time since the recession, except for a few months last school year. So I think it'll be interesting to see how these young students really adjust to seeing a police officer every day.
So how do we avoid what happened down in Broward County, where this young man had so many red flags out there and nobody within the sheriff's office or in the system saw them?
I think that's the million-dollar question, but there's really, we have to look at what happened and what failed to learn from it. And I think there was a fractured communication process. I think that's one of the biggest things. If you actually look at 9/11, it's very similar of all the broken agencies that weren't communicating properly. So that is definitely a key area we need to focus on.
We have to take a quick break there. We'll have final thoughts in a moment. Welcome back. We continue our discussion about school security. And Chief, let me start with you. Sure. You got the first day of school over. What has to be done in the near term in terms of getting this department up and running as we really go into the school year in earnest?
Well, one of my focuses on exceptional customer service, and we listen to what we're hearing. And the chairwoman has mentioned training and training our staff. Our officers have been trained in de-escalation, and that's a train-the-trainer program. So we're going to bring that into the schools, in every school. Every school is going to have a safety committee. We have to get that up and running right away. Cross sections of administrators, mental health professionals, guidance counselors, and our officers to come together on a regular basis to discuss in those little microcosms the issues at hand in those schools.
You talked about mental health, and we talked in our last segment about trying to deal with the issue that happened in Broward County in terms of red flags. So the question is, what is the school district doing to coordinate this whole thing, whether it's with different law enforcement agencies or the Department of Children and Families, other agencies and parts of government out there that may be the pieces of the puzzle that we have to put together in order to avoid other tragedies?
I would tell you it would take longer than the 3 minutes left I think we have in the show, but there's been a lot going on, and there's been a lot of work and coordination through the mental health plan that we submitted to the state. Again, what's going on with the police force. But one thing I want to close on, especially at the beginning of school, and I know we've said this before, but what ultimately makes this different is that every single person, no matter parent, teacher, administrator, police officer, everyone plays a role. So it's to see something, say something. Don't be afraid if there's someone that, a student or something that is alarming someone. Students have to be empowered, staff have to be empowered, parents have to be empowered to bring that forward so we can address it so it's not too late.
Elizabeth, are you picking that up, that even parents and other kids out there are saying that we're in a new world here, and nobody wants to be basically tattling or snitching on people, but we all have, precious children in the school, and that that we have to be more on the lookout for problems than we have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year we saw a string of social media threats both before Parkland and after in Sarasota County, and a lot of those threats came to the police attention because of students. So I really think you do see this attitude with students where, they fear for their own safety, they're monitoring social media, and in some ways they're really the better eyes and ears because they're just on all of these forums naturally. So you do see that.
But Chief, I would say that can also be problematic. I mean, we know young people, we know even adults who may use our sensitivity about school security right now in order to call things in that shouldn't be called in. How do you weed out the real threats from?
That's our job, and I'm really, out of the tragedy came a movement of students, and I applaud them for getting involved and being active and being vocal. No one wants this to happen ever again, and I think it's the young people, our children, who can play a big role in what's going on. And I think they realize this whole issue about snitching is not a bad thing. It's being a good neighbor. It's being a good community member.
Bridget, final thought?
I absolutely agree. I think that what Elizabeth touched on is something that see something, say something, as simple as it is incredibly powerful. And we just need to continue to echo that so that we can work together as a community to keep everyone safe.
Okay, we have to leave it there. I thank you all for joining us tonight. We want to thank Sarasota School Board Chair Bridget Ziegler, Sarasota Schools' new Police Chief Paul Grahowski, and Elizabeth Ginnis, the education reporter for the Herald Tribune, for joining us tonight.